Hi, it's Coop again. We got another van that Oop wants to do a little story on. There's a long story behind this particular van. I guess I could start at the beginning. I met a friend of mine, Jimmy C. He's an artist from California at one of the reunions way back in the early 90s. He was at the reunion with Ed Roth in this van, and Jimmy had a sign shop for years called Rainbow Signs. It was in Arizona, and when I met him he was living in Southern California and he was driving this van that weekend. But every year that I've gone to the reunion after that, I'd see Jimmy, but the van, he didn't have the van. So for years and years and years I bugged him about, where's that van, where's that van? So finally, about 5 years ago, I ran into Jimmy, and he had moved back to Arizona. He invited me over to this house, and Scotty and I had been out to the SEMA show, and we drove down to Parker to see Jimmy. And then after we were there for a little while, it dawned on me, he said, hey, where's the van? Jimmy had put it in storage in a storage lot out in the desert. It was set out in the desert for 20-some years. So of course, me and Scotty, being the Dodge guys, we wanted to go see the van. So he took us over to this storage lot, and the van is way back in the corner. It'd been sitting back there forever. It was covered with about 6 pounds of dust. The rubber on the tires had completely disintegrated. The tires were they were gone. And but the truck is in amazingly good shape, considering it's 50 years old. So we rooted around in it for a while, was looking at it, and then we went back to his house, and I asked him, I said, well, what are you going to do with the van? And he said, well, I don't know, I'll probably do something with it someday. And I said, well, why don't you just sell it? You had it for all this time. He said, why don't you just sell the van? And of course, Dina, his wife, was there, and of course she piped in. He said, well, what would a van like that be worth, And it's like, well, I don't know. In the kind of shape it's in, it's probably worth a couple $1,000s. And of course, then Dina's ears perked up. $2,000 for that piece of... So she started poking Jimmy, sell it, sell it. So he said, okay, we'll sell it. Well, Scotty and I are both sitting there looking at each other like, well, who's going to get the van? Because he wanted it as bad as I did. So we kind of ended up buying it together. We split it right down the middle, and we bought this truck as a partnership. So it's set up as it's a right of survivorship, as they say. So the last guy standing actually gets the van. So we've worked on it together now for 5 years. When we first got the van, it had a 383 in it, a big block. I'm not sure who put it in there, but it ran pretty good, but we started having problems with it. It kept fouling out spark plugs on the one bank, and it was fouling them out in 200 or 300 miles to the point where the cylinder wouldn't fire, and we couldn't figure it out. We tried and tried and tried to see what was wrong with it. And the best we've ever been able to determine was that it's got a hairline crack in the block somewhere, and it's letting the oil get into the cylinder. But at any rate, Scotty was up at Summit a couple of years ago, and they went into their blowout room where they're blowing out some, stuff that they want to get rid of. And there was a 318 short block rebuilt motor that was in there for like $600. So he calls me on the phone and says, you want to get this motor? And it says, like, okay. We bought the 318 and swapped it back into the truck and put the automatic in it. It's got an automatic transmission, and it's run pretty good ever since. So I've been driving it. We kind of share it. He has it for a while. I have it for a while. I've taken it to several truck-ins over the years. Well, when we were at the SEMA show last year, I ran into Dennis Roth, which is Ed Roth's son, and told him about, getting the van. And he looks at me and he goes, well, that van used to belong to Dad. I said, are you serious? He said, yeah, that used to be Dad's shop truck. So in 1965, Ed bought this van brand new from the dealership and used it as his shop truck for several years before he sold it. And somehow Jimmy ended up with it years later. And I know that to be true not long ago, somebody sent me this picture. It's a picture of this van with Ed's name on the side of it that was taken in New Jersey in 1967. So he drove this van all over the country. So how Jimmy ended up with it, I've never really figured it out, but Dennis knew that this was his van. If you open the doors up on the other side, it's got some of Ed's lettering on the insides of the doors. And of course, it's like anything, you would recognize somebody's handwriting. I recognize his sign work. That's definitely Ed's. So when we got it, it didn't have the original wheels on it, and I wanted to get a set of Kragers so it would match the wheels that he had it on it when he owned it. So I found a set of Kragers. Got them for a friend of mine, a customer, last summer, and put the Kragers back on the truck. And I ended up driving it to the Rat Fink reunion this past June. Drove it all the way to Utah from Ohio and back. So it's got a few miles on it now. But that's basically the story. Well, there's another unique. We were at the Nationals with this van in Altamont a few years ago, and Matchstick and I were sitting around the campsite, and these two guys come walking down the road, and these guys are just blasted out of their minds. And one looks over and he goes, "Oh look, there's that Rainbow Siggins van." So ever since then, we've been calling it the Siggins van. It's pretty much the way we found it, other than just cleaning it up. We put some different seats in it, seats that Scotty had in his A100 inventory. Like of course the motor, and we put some interior stuff in it just to make it a little more comfortable to drive it around. Put some carpeting on the walls and on the engine cover, and added a few little creature comforts, new stereo, put a console in it, some lighting, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it's just the way it was when we found it. All the decorations, the stickers, all that kind of stuff was there from when we found the truck. We haven't decided what to do with it yet because of its originality. We really don't want to change the truck. We don't want to sand it down and do all kinds of stuff with it. We just want to kind of leave it the way it is. I guess you could call it a survivor van, but this particular one over here, the one that Ed put on there, they were at a car show somewhere, and there was a couple of guys sitting in their booth who was drinking beer, and Ed was a teetotaler. He didn't like people standing around drinking beer, so he goes over, and instead of saying something to them, he goes over and letters that on the door, and then they look at that, and then they wandered away. So that was his very subtle way of saying, "Get the hell out of here." But
what's with the big wrench?
Well, I took it to the reunion this year and put it in the car show at the reunion. Eileen, Ed's widow, wanted me to make sure it was in the show since this originally was Ed Roth's truck. And they do this thing where the artists go around and pick their favorite vehicle, and then they have these awards that they make that you win, from them picking your van. So that was the award that I got for being in the car show out there in Utah. I didn't even get the truck parked before somebody come over and put a sticker on it that this was the one they were going to pick. So the van was the hit of the show. But the unique thing about it was the fact that Ed owned this truck when it was new, and I didn't even know that when we got the van. I didn't realize it until later that it had actually belonged to Ed.
How is it to drive?
It drives pretty nice. It's got some wind noise. We have replaced some of the rubbers in the doors and that kind of stuff because they were all bad. But typical early model, it makes a lot of noise, but it's not bad. I mean, like I say, I drove it all the way to Utah and back, and it was fairly comfortable. Trucking a early model cross country is not exactly riding in a Cadillac, but it was fun. It's fun to drive. Again, it's one of the older vehicles, and you go someplace with this thing and everybody's going to look at it and wants to wave at you. And what is that? Everybody thinks it's a Ford. Nice Ford van. No, it's not.
Now the bumper, you did that, or was that?
The Nerf bars, Scotty put those on there. It didn't have a bumper on it when we got it. We added the hitch to it so we could pull a trailer with it. But other than that, you know, we've done a few mechanical things to it. It's the original transmission that was in it. We had it rebuilt, put it back in. Again, it had a 383 with a different transmission originally, so it's got the original automatic and original size motor that was in it to start with. It had a V8. The tail lights are from a Corvair. Scotty stuck those on there. One of the tail lights was busted when we got it. Of course, he didn't want to put the stock ones back on. He wanted to do something different. So.
Classic Charger.
Oh yeah, the Charger gas cap on there. We had to do a few decorative things to it, but the whip antenna and the roof rack, the wing and everything, that was all on the truck originally. I'm pretty sure Jimmy probably put those on there. Jimmy told me that they used to take this out in the desert and dune jump with it and all kinds of stuff, so I mean, it's probably been thrashed pretty good. But the truck has held up really well. It's not beat up real bad. There's a few dents here and there, but there's no rust on it anywhere. I mean, it's lived its entire life in Southern California and Arizona, so it's not rotted anywhere. Amazingly, when we went to take things apart, they came apart fairly easy. It wasn't all rusted up where you couldn't get the bolts off. So it's been fun, and of course we keep it inside. It never sits outside. Of course, it got rained on last night. It's probably the first time it's been wet since I owned it. So it's never wash it, because if you do, the paint's coming off.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the story.